Perfect. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to give it a couple of minutes so people can log on. Our apologies on a little bit of a late start, but we are so happy to have you guys here in learning about cybersecurity awareness. Let's see. Okay. So it looks like we have quite a few people logging on, and if it's okay with you, Linda and Rachel, we will get started. Thank you guys so much for joining us today for the Cybersecurity Basics with Linda Widop. This webinar is designed to educate nonprofit leaders on the basics of cybersecurity threats with emphasis on remote work environments. So we will be working to identify concerns and provide strategies to reduce risk. And so we have Linda this morning with us. She is the Managing Director of Tech Impact. She manages all aspects of clients' relations and tech impact, including educational nonprofits about technology solutions. She works with local, regional, and national partners to provide the nonprofit community with increased knowledge of technology throughout speaking engagements. And so we are so happy to have you here, Linda, to help us with our tech security. And so with that being said, I will turn it over to you, and thank you everybody for joining us today.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Rachel. Hi, we are a nonprofit organization. So I work for a nonprofit organization called Tech Impact, and we provide technology services, education, and training to other nonprofits and communities in a couple of different ways. And I bring this up because I like to set this and let you know that we are a managed service provider. We provide IT help desk services and support to over 260 nonprofits across the country. We have about 7,000 end users that contact our help desk. We have a fully staffed cybersecurity department that helps nonprofits constantly every day do assessments, planning, remediation, education, and all of that stuff. So we bring this webinar to you today because we've seen nonprofits being targeted for cyber threats and cyber criminal activities, and we want to make sure that you all are working in the safest possible environment. Rachel had let you know who I am. My email address is at the bottom here. Feel free, please, to email me if you have any questions or you want to have a discussion about your particular situation. We're always happy to talk to you. Today's agenda, we're just going to go through some basics, introduction to cybersecurity principles. We're going to talk about vulnerabilities, threats, actors, and vectors. Oh my. Talk about remote work considerations, because now that we're in this COVID pandemic, many of us are, working from home, and how does that contribute to our vulnerabilities? And then we'll give you some quick tips and about how to stay safer. So let's go ahead and move right into it. I'm going to try to I talk fast because I'm from Philly, and that's just the way we are. But particularly, I want to go through some of this content pretty quickly today and spend time on some of the more detailed sections of this, and then also provide you guys with some opportunity to ask some questions. So anyway, if I go too slowly, go ahead and use the chat function, or go too quickly, I mean, or you have a question, please feel free to use the chat in the Zoom, and we'll go through that. So, at the basic, what is cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is preventative methods used to protect information from being stolen, compromised, or attacked. I mean, that's pretty straightforward stuff, right? But what we're going to dive deeper into today is what is cybersecurity, and what is the encompassing factors here. And we're going to talk about users and networks, devices, and how criminals may gain access through those things. So we're going to walk through this pretty detailed today. Nonprofit, you know, when I started at Tech Impact 17 years ago, we were really mainly worried about, you know, people walking off with computers and that kind of a thing. That was what we considered cybersecurity. In the past couple of years, we've heard from nonprofits who, you know, tell us, we're not interested in worrying about cybersecurity because criminals are really after the big, right, the big targets like Home Depot and Target and the VA hospital and the city of Atlanta and all these big breaches that we hear about on the news, right? We you know, turn on the news and they're talking about another breach at a large, you know, multinational corporation or whatever. But cyber criminals are really starting to focus in on nonprofits because what they've determined and what they've found out is that nonprofits, have a lot of sensitive data. So we capture data about the people that we serve, right? So, like think of your, you know, your particular client list and how vulnerable, you know, that information would be if it got out for the people that you serve. You know, domestic violence and prevention and, you know, abuse prevention, et cetera. You've got a lot of information that cyber criminals can steal from you and either hold you ransom and say, hey, we've got your information and we're going to make this public unless you pay us a ransom for it. This just happened to an organization that we work with. Somehow the information got out and the organization was breached. This is a behavioral health, substance abuse, methadone dispensary. Their patient and customer or client information was, you know, gotten, and the cyber criminals held them for ransom. And believe me when I tell you, it was a 6-figure payout at the end of the day for them to, you know, get that information back from the criminals. So, you know, the cyber criminals see that and they see that how much that data is important, how important that data is to us. And so they're really starting to target us. They also find nonprofits to be stepping stones into a bigger target. What do I mean by this? I mean that we are at our core, you know, we're not, as nonprofits, we are always trying to send messages out to the community. So we're sending informational messages out to the community, you know, domestic violence awareness and how to, you know, cope, those kind of messages. We're also sending funding requests. So, you know, join us for our event or buy a ticket to X, Y, or Z, donate to, you know, whatever it is. So we're constantly sending those messages out. Cyber criminals see that as their opportunity. If they can breach our system and get that information for that target list, then they can start targeting our whole donor list, our whole list, and start to find those other people as targets. We're also really busy, right? So we're busy people. We're constantly understaffed and under-resourced, and we're trying to do 2 and 3 jobs at a time. And we don't really have time to pay attention to cybersecurity or threats or vulnerabilities. And criminals know this about us, so they're really targeting us. We don't have a cybersecurity, you know, department that's watching over everything like this. So we don't have the money to, you know, to the funding to support that. And a lot of our staff, let's face it, are not computer savvy. These are people who are social workers. These are people who are out on the front lines, you know, therapists and dealing with customers and clients and patients. And they're not really computer savvy. They're using the computer as a tool that's a necessary tool for them to whatever, enter their data or whatever they need to do. So for those reasons, we're really at risk. So what are the cyber criminals after? Well, they're after access. They want access to our computers and servers in order for them to use that to launch scams against other individuals or organizations. They're after our money. Frankly, they're just going to look for a quick cash transfer. We've all seen those emails go around that look like it's from the CEO of our organization to the CFO of our organization. Hey, I need a quick transfer of money, right? We know plenty of nonprofits who have fallen for that scam, and money has gone directly out of their bank accounts into the cyber criminal bank account. There's nothing you can do about it. They're looking for information to sell, right? So they're looking for any records that they can come across, even if it seems to you like it's a simple spreadsheet of a fundraising event. Those criminals, if they can get their hands onto that one spreadsheet, even if it doesn't have full information of our donors, it has partial information, they will piece that together with other information that they can find, and they will sell that. And it's usually being sold at $1 per record or 20 cents per record, or whatever it is on the what they call the dark web. And they're also looking for information. And this last one here, they're looking for information if your organization has a mission that could have two sides to it. You've got adversaries, right? Political adversaries. Those adversaries are really going to target your organization and try to find any information on your organization that could be used against your mission to further their own mission. So that's another thing that cyber criminals are after. So who are these actors? We call them actors, right? There's basically three categories of actors here. Cyber criminals are the ones that we're always kind of in our back of our mind, some really bad person with bad intentions trying to make a quick dollar. That's them. But the other ones that we want to really pay attention to, unfortunately, are our own staff. Our own staff leave us vulnerable because of the things that they do inadvertently or on purpose with our own computer systems and data. And then that third category, those adversaries that I just mentioned earlier who may be against us. So cyber criminals are going to attack us using the, a lot of the methods that you've heard about. Ransomware attacks where they hold you for, hold your data for ransom and you have to pay them. Phishing, where they send you an email and they say, oh, you have to reset your password, and you fall for it and click on it and reset your password. And now they have your password. Denial of service, where they target your organization and they just flood your network with a lot of requests until you get overwhelmed. Malware, installing botnets, etc. So again, some of these common threats, right? Stealing email, repurposing your servers. We've seen instances where if you have a server on premise, so if you still have a server in your organization, there are plenty of cyber criminals who are just looking for storage space on your server. We've seen like child porn stuff on servers of nonprofits where there's somebody who's a sicko and does that kind of stuff. They store all of that porn stuff on your server, and then they're selling it to other perverts on the internet, whatever. And then next thing you know, the FBI shows up at your door saying and arresting all of you for being child porn, right? So we've actually seen that happen on at least one occasion for that kind of filth. But on other, like there was another random one where somebody was selling the episodes of TV shows for some weird reason off of a nonprofit server. So that stuff happens, right? And so we want to continue to think about all of these threats that have, that we've seen happen. Your internal staff, as I said, probably 80% of all security breaches somehow have been started by internal staff. Sometimes it's just careless with data. We're not really thinking, this has happened to everybody. I know it's happened to everybody on the call. It's happened to me. You open up an email, you want to send an attachment or an email to a coworker, you start typing in the coworker's name, you hit enter and you've sent it and you've inadvertently sent that email to someone with the same name, right? So I tried to send it to my coworker, Alyssa. It's got a spreadsheet full of, you know, sensitive information. And my friend, I'm a crazy bird watcher, right? My bird watching friend, Alyssa, sends me a nice email back and says, hey, Linda, I don't think this was meant for me, right? Oh, darn. You're absolutely right, Alyssa. Please ignore that. Well, if Alyssa was, if the other Alyssa, the bird watcher Alyssa, wasn't, you know, an upstanding citizen, right? She could very well open that up and say, maybe I should be making some money off of this information or whatever, right? So that's what we mean by careless with data. Careless with credentials. Many of us, I'm as guilty as anyone else on this, right? I have probably a dozen systems that I have to log into on a regular basis for work or for the bird watching stuff, right? I'm the president of the bird watching club. I have 3 systems I have to log in there. I try to use the same username and password for all of them because I don't want to have to remember 12 different usernames and passwords, right? I'm careless with my credentials because if a hacker learns my one username and password, they're going to use that against all of my other systems that I have to log into. And chances are they're going to actually be able to get into 12 systems because they found my one username and password. So that's what we mean by careless with credentials. We still see Post-it notes on people's monitor, right, with their password on a Post-it note because they've forgotten it so many times. Internal staff also steal information. I mean, we like to think that everybody that works for us is is on the mission and really upstanding. But the fact of the matter is sometimes they steal information from us. Sometimes they do something dumb and then they try to cover it up instead of coming clean about it. And they install a lot of software on their machines. Everybody wants to install the latest fun thing, the TikTok, all of this stuff. Everybody wants to install stuff on the computer, and inadvertently they've installed some malware on the computer. So that, for those reasons, internal staff really are a big vulnerability for our organizations. The adversaries, again, we talked about earlier, are against our mission, and they are going to target your organization. So if you think that you've got political adversaries, you should probably do more than what we're going to talk about in this webinar today. You should probably get a professional involved and understand what you can do to prevent your adversaries from gaining access to your information. So these are what the targeted attacks mean, right? So you're going to, they're going to aim to spy on your organization. So sometimes they're not going to just outright steal your data. They're going to spy on you, and they're going to monitor the emails that go back and forth between your internal, and they're going to read all of the emails. And then the one time you email and say, uh-oh, we have a problem, so-and-so did something, right? They're going to expose that and let everybody know that your organization made a mistake or, whatever it is. So that's what I mean. Most of the time, these are, again, these are people who are against your mission for one reason or another. You can see how, like, women's health rights, right? Abortion, pro-life, pro-choice, like that's the kind of thing we're talking about here. And you can extrapolate that out to other missions. There's also the government stuff, right? If a government is against you, so if there's probably not a lot you can do about that. You can spend tons and tons of money on it. But if the government wants in, whether it's the US government or another government, they're probably going to get in. So we're going to talk about threat vectors. How do these bad guys get in? This is a kind of a big overview, right? A broad brush here. Network penetration. So we're going to talk about network penetration, phishing scams, user errors, and lost and stolen devices. And the way that we really look at these things, when we talk about cybersecurity threat vectors, we've got 6 categories that we worry about with cybersecurity threats. We look at device security. How are the actual computer devices being secured? We look at account security. How are your users gaining access to the information that they need? We're looking at malware controls. How are you minimizing your exposure to viruses and malware and that kind of a thing? We look at network controls. How are your internal networks, so your local area networks in the office, your working from home environment, how are you accessing information that's outside of your organization in the cloud or on a hosted server, et cetera? And then we look at data loss controls and item level encryption. Those two last subjects we're not going to cover in today's webinar because those are a little bit more advanced and more around compliance than they are around security in and of itself. So we can talk about that another time. So of these little bubbles that we just showed you, how concerned should you be? I've tried to create a matrix here to give you some sort of a framework to work in. So if we look at network controls and malware controls, et cetera, if we say, well, we're just a regular nonprofit, there's nothing special about us, we don't have any regulatory concerns, we don't have any political enemies or adversaries, right? We're just, run-of-the-mill nonprofit, then, we should be concerned at a high level for malware controls. Why? Because everybody should be worried about malware controls, and it's a simple thing for us to fix. Network controls, we should have a medium concern there. Account security, we should have a medium concern there. We should really kind of put some effort towards those two things. And in terms of item level encryption and data loss controls, we can probably get away with the minimal there. And then as we start to see more, need here, right? Oh, so maybe we deal in a regulatory or compliance area like HIPAA or FIRMA or one of those kinds of things, or we have personally identifiable PII information, right? Maybe we should take it the next step and elevate some of those lows into mediums and some of those mediums into high. And so you could see how this framework is, playing out. If you've got resourced adversaries and you're in one of those situations where you're pro-life or pro-choice or climate change, non-climate change, or something like that, you should probably spend a lot of time and effort and therefore money and be at the highest level here. So let's dive in. We're first going to start with the people. We're going to look at the people and user attacks and talk about what we're seeing out there and give us some information about that. So account security, again, is ensuring that people have only the level of access that they really need, and we know who's accessing what. So this is account security, and really what we're talking about today is those things about, this is really about the user. And so we're going to start with phishing, because phishing is the biggest thing, the biggest threat to account security. Why? Because phishing is targeted towards having us as a user click on a link and give the hacker basically our user credentials. So I'm going to go through these next slides very quickly. You'll have them, you'll have the slide deck in the recording. You can go back through them and kind of go slowly. But an obvious phish looks like this. Hey, Pat Callahan, by the way, is our executive director, and Pat Callahan probably gets more phishing emails than anybody else in our organization. Why? Because our website, and I know your website does this too, identifies Pat Callahan as our executive director. So the cyber criminals go through everybody's websites and they go to the About Us page, and then they start to look and they see the who's who. Sometimes they do this with what they call bots, where the bot just searches and finds email addresses on, every website, known to mankind. In other cases, there's actual human beings that click on our website and they click on the About Us page and they start to copy out that information, and they're using that. It's called a semi-targeted attack, where there's a human being looking up information about our organization. Who's in charge of the finances? Who's the executive director, right? And they're starting to use that. So Pat gets a lot of this. It's obviously a fake thing, because how do we know it's a fake thing? There's a lot of, red flags here, who it's from, so the email address that it's from. Obviously, we don't have a coronavirus, we're not a medical thing here. Here's one from a Singapore specialist, right, telling us about coronavirus. This is pretty fishy, but it obviously, again, we probably don't know anybody from Singapore and probably wouldn't take corona advice from somebody in Singapore if we didn't know them. Here's a not so obvious fish, right? This looks like it's coming from our internal human resources, right? So, and this is, going to be filled out, like that company name is going to be filled out with like our company name, right? Tech Impact. So it's going to look a little bit more realistic because it's coming from human resources, and maybe our staff would be like, oh, Lauren, our HR director, just sent us something we should probably pay attention to regarding the coronavirus, right? We call this next one recreational fishing. There's a lot of this went out like in March, where Netflix is like, oh, if you're going to be staying at home, we've got a free, right, 30 days free of Netflix. As soon as you click on that link, you're going to get a malware installed on your computer. You're not really going to get any free Netflix, and your whole computer is going to be hosed up. COVID-19 related phishing, right? So there's a lot of things out there. There were going around: treatment scams, supply scams, provider scams, charity scams, right? There's a lot of this is still going on, unfortunately, in the food service industry, where, I still get these emails that look like it's from a local restaurant saying, please help. We had to lay off all of our food servers and whatnot. And here's a virtual tip jar. And guess what? Those tip jars are not going to the restaurant or the restaurant workers. They're going to some cyber criminal someplace, right? So those kinds of things are still going around. So how can we avoid being, falling victim to the fish? Number one, only open email from known email addresses. Check the email address twice. Make sure that it's spelled correctly, right? So for us, if it looked like it was coming from, say, the coalition, right? Make sure that it says NM, whatever DAC, whatever it is, or CADV.org, and there's not any letters missing in there, that kind of thing, right? Check with your management team before clicking on any links. Even at Tech Impact, you'd be surprised. We're pretty savvy about this kind of stuff. We have a whole department of people who are security engineers working on this kind of stuff. And we even send emails around to each other going, do you think this looks legit? It looks a little funny to me, right? And so we have it kind of approved by our internal management team and or security team. And guess what? Sometimes it's a pretty good phishing scam that we found. If you're not sure, never respond to the email. So if you get an email from your executive director asking you to do something that you don't normally do, like, hey, quickly, I'm at a meeting and I need you to buy gift cards because I need to hand them out at this event that I'm at. Please buy the gift cards and send me the codes so I can give them out because I forgot. That's a big scam that goes around, right? Don't respond to your executive director via email, because if the email has, if his or her email account has been compromised, you're really just going to be interacting and communicating with the hacker. Like, hey, is this really you? The hacker's going to say, yeah, it's really me, and I need those gift cards ASAP. Don't do that. Rather, pick up the phone and call your executive director or text them, but don't respond via email, right? Walk over to their office if you're still in, if you're still in that kind of working environment, or call or text and say, did you just send me, whatever? Verify it that way. Your IT professional can also configure Office 365 and Google and some other email systems to prevent these kinds of emails from even coming into your inbox. So you want to take those kind of tests. These are the big scams that are going around. We still see these scams going around via the internet, right? Tracking, where's the latest corona outbreak. That map, if you click on it, is going to install malware onto your computer. We see a lot of this on mobile devices. There's so many of this type of thing going around, like via Facebook, right? You have this Facebook ad pop up and it's, latest Corona app or whatever like that, and you click on it, and now your phone is just filled with malware as well. So for account security, right, cyber criminals want to gain access to your credentials to steal money, to use your credentials to unlock other systems, or to spoof your email to continue attacks on others. And so again, 80% of all cyber breaches are initiated by this account security stuff, by your users accidentally doing something. Now let's move on to device attacks. And the device security, we're talking about two things: how to secure your devices, and also malware controls, because the malware controls are really installed on your computer, or on the computer or device. In today's world, a lot of us got sent home in March, like hey, the office is now closed. You're all working remotely. And luckily for me, I have a Tech Impact issued laptop that I use, no matter where I am, in the office, at home, all over the world, doing whatever. But some of us had, like some workers, had a desktop computer sitting in the office, and when they were told not to come into the office, they went home and logged into their personal computer to start to try to work. Those personal if you're using an organization owned computer, chances are your IT professional, whoever that may be, has policies in place to update the operating system. You have antivirus and anti-malware that's installed and maintained, right? Updated often, and scans are run. And your user authentication is managed by like a active directory. Like you have to log into the domain, or you have to log into like your Office 365 account or something like that. But when we switch to personal computers, all bets are off, right? First and foremost, we're using a home version of the operating system. So we're using like Windows 8 or Windows 7 or Windows 10 Home Edition, which doesn't have all the fancy security features that we would need. We're left to our own devices, we're left to our own schedule. Do we do the updates? When's the last time you updated your home computer, right? Antivirus, anti-malware. When's the last time you actually sat there and took the time to run the antivirus scans and update the definitions and things like that? And are your computers being shared by other family members? If you're sharing your computer with other family members, even if you have good discipline about using your home computer and not downloading every free app in America, on the web and that kind of stuff, that doesn't necessarily mean that your other family members aren't doing that, right? Oh, I want to download the latest fun game. It's a free game and I wanted to download it, right? Those free games are always full of some sort of malware. Sometimes it's just for their own purposes because they're trying to collect data on you and understand what ads to present you with, like in-game ads and that kind of stuff. Other times they're selling that information to other, people who might be cyber criminals. And of course, sometimes they are just cyber criminals and they've downloaded that. You get the app, but now they're logging your keystrokes to try to find out what your bank information is, right? So they can steal your money from you, that kind of thing. But if you're using that personal computer to access the organization's systems, then you're not just exposing you and your family to those cyber criminals and those cyber threats, but now you're exposing the organization that you work for to those threats, right? So it's kind of double duty. Let me tell you, when March came around, the cyber criminals were like throwing themselves parties, and they were like, "This is awesome stuff," because we're just going to be rich, rich, rich. So this, what we talk about is bring your own device, BYOD policy. Personal devices, present that risk, right, for those things that we just mentioned. If you are working with an IT professional, you can allow these personal devices to access your organizational information in a more controlled way through two things: MAM, mobile application management, or MDM, mobile device management, or a combination of both, right? So mobile application management is a way that your IT pro can set up a control access to applications. And what this means is if a user needs to use a personal device to access your, say, cloud applications, your Office 365 or Google accounts, or your electronic health records if they're online, that kind of stuff, we can apply security settings to those applications which restrict actions or restrict access based on the user authentication method, okay? And if we've downloaded, so let's say you've got an iPhone and you download the Office 365 Outlook app or Teams app or OneDrive app onto your iPhone or your computer at home. If something goes wrong, we can send a message out to that iPhone or that computer at home to say, wipe all the data, all the OneDrive data or Teams data or Outlook data, wipe it. So this way, if we reported something wrong with our home computer, the person who stole that computer or hacked into that computer wouldn't have access to that data. So that's what application management means. Mobile device management takes that one step further and says, well, we can also set up like multi-factor authentication on that device. We can set up controls of the device that says if that device doesn't have antivirus installed on it, it cannot be used to access our systems. If the antivirus is out of date, it cannot be used. If the operating system is below a minimum, it cannot be used, right? So we're restricting access to our systems from particular devices. We're setting minimum thresholds. The device has to have at least this stuff on it, security stuff on it, in order for us to allow it to be used to access our information. And if the device itself has become compromised in one way or another, we can actually wipe everything off that computer, everything, including the operating system. We hit a button and we say, basically kill that device. So the hacker might have access to the device, or if it's been physically stolen, somebody gets their hands on your device, but they won't have anything loaded on it. No operating system, no applications, no data, no nothing. So we'd be in control that way. So those are some of the things that we can do to you know, minimize the devices from being the threat there. So again, cyber criminals are gaining access to your device because they want to gain access to your account. They put a little keylogger on there and they watch all your keystrokes, and then they figure out that you went to your bank, and then they know your bank account number, etc. They want to launch attacks against others through your computer, and you know, most of us understand that they want to encrypt our device so that you know, they can get us for ransomware. So remote working, there's basically, you know, we all got sent home, or a lot of us got sent home, and we're working from home, and now we've got to access the information from outside of the office. And so we're going to talk about network controls here. You know, how can we protect your access? Network controls in this context really means, how do we access our information through, you know, some various network, right? So the most common one today is cloud computing. We're talking about when we say, you know, there's a couple of different ways to access data. We favor cloud computing at Tech Impact and recommend it and advise everybody, if you can get into a cloud situation where you're connecting via a web browser to a, you know, a system like your email system, your file sharing system, your, you know, electronic health records or donor management system, etc. And those are managed by a cloud vendor. That's going to be your best option, not just for cyber security that we're talking about today, but also just ease of access and a lot of other, you know, value there. The cloud vendor in this case provides the secure platform. So the onus is not on us anymore, our network administrator, to make sure that the server is in a secure location and that it's got all the updates on it and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. That's the vendor's responsibility. And you're basically paying that vendor to have those data centers with all of that stuff already, you know, you know, in place and updated, and, you know, hundreds or thousands of people hired to maintain that stuff. You're connecting to that cloud using HTTPS, which is a secure protocol, which means that the, you know, the browser and the vendor are using a secure tunnel to allow you to have access to your data. So your data is not vulnerable in transit between, you know, the cloud and your web browser. The data itself is stored in a secure data center, and it's accessible from any device as long as you've got an internet connection. So we favor this method, but because there are some applications and systems that we use that still need to be on your server somewhere, we're going to talk about two different access methods to get to that information. One of them is called a VPN, or virtual private network, and the other is called remote desktop protocol, or RDP. Both of these create a tunnel for you to access your information securely. So in the virtual private network, or VPN, we're looking at, from left to right in the diagram, we're looking at your home computer. So you've got a computer at home that you have to access your network. So on the right-hand side here, you'll see your office network. Your office network might have a computer that has a database on it. Maybe it's your accounting database like QuickBooks. Maybe it's your client information database, right? Your case management database that you still have on a server somewhere. In order for you to not be hacked, and see where the cyber criminal is? The cyber criminal is in the middle of this picture. What the cyber criminal is going to do is they're going to put a like network sniffer, for lack of a better term, out there, and they're going to watch data travel across the network, across the internet. And if they're seeing some data come through what is called unencrypted, where they can read the data, then they're going to be able to hack that information. They're going to be able to steal that information, what they call in transit, right? So they put a little sniffer out there, and all the data that's going between your home computer and your office computer is just being intercepted, copied, and then sent to your computer. To prevent that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a tunnel on the internet called a VPN, or a virtual private network. And that tunnel encrypts the data between your office network on the right and your home computer on the left, right? And in order to do that, your IT professional has to do some stuff on the network in the firewall to create that VPN, and then give you what they call a VPN client on your local computer. So you'll have to open up a little application, put your username and password in there, and your IT pro will help you configure that properly. And once you open that up, you have access to the network, the office network, through that tunnel. So that's called a VPN. The VPN can also protect that information even if you're in a cloud app. So that HTTPS that I talked about earlier, some of the cloud places that you go don't necessarily have the S on the end of that. The secure, S is for secure, right? So the VPN allows that information to travel back and forth through that tunnel as well. So there's some pros and cons, right? Pros are, the function is built into most of the routers and firewalls, and your IT pro just needs to configure it for you and send you the client. The cons are that sometimes it requires additional licensing, so you'll have to pay some more for that licensing. The connection is finicky, right? And honestly, I've never had a VPN work properly when I absolutely needed it the most, like on a Friday night or whatever like that, right? So you're constantly in with your network administrator saying, my VPN isn't, working, fix it, and that kind of a thing. And the other con is, and what we've seen from the COVID response, is that a lot of people jumped on free VPN clients. So they Googled it, right? Somebody said, you need a VPN, and they went on to the Google and they typed in VPN, and they clicked on the very first thing that they saw, which is a free VPN client, free, free, free. And they're like, great, Linda told us that it was going to cost money, but we found a free one, right? Well, you know what happened with the free one, right? They're actually malware, and they're keyloggers, and so you've been breached. So be careful of that. The other way to access your computer, your office information, is through an RDC, or remote desktop connection. Remote desktop connection acts a little bit differently. In VPN, your network administrator is giving you access to the network and to the server. With a remote desktop connection, D is for desktop, you actually are connecting to your computer that you left in the office. So if you went running, screaming home in March sometime, and you left your computer in the office turned on, you could actually leapfrog from your home computer to your office computer, and then from your office computer into any of those systems that were on the network in your computer, right? You can even send print jobs to the printer and stuff like that. So that's called a remote desktop connection. If you're using Windows machines, this is, built into Windows, where you could have put a little setting on your office computer that says allow remote desktop connections, and then you can use the client on your home computer to make that connection into your office computer. Now, no data is transferring between your computer in the office and your home computer, just screenshots of what's happening. So you're remote controlling your office computer. So as you're typing on the keyboard at home, the keystrokes are being sent across the internet and typed into your computer in the office. So for that reason, no information is being transferred between the home computer and the network, the office computer. It keeps a lot of your data safe. Sometimes this is referred to as a virtual desktop environment as well. So the pros and cons for RDC from remote desktop, right? It keeps your organization data in the office, which is great, but there's a lag time. So if you're working from home and you have a slow internet connection at home, you know, you got the basic internet package from your internet service provider, and you've got 3 kids at home trying to stream and Zoom their homework, and you've got a partner or other person in the house that's like watching Netflix on your internet, you're going to see a lot of lag time. So you're going to type a keystroke on your home computer and you're not going to see it appear for many seconds later, and it's frustrating. You need to use an approved RDC client. Again, don't download the free client, right? Do some research. And it may require your IT pro to still make some changes in your firewall anyway. So here are some resources for remote desktop, right, and VPN. So VPN, SonicWall firewalls, Meraki firewalls are good ones that we have a lot of experience with and know work well and are inexpensive or free, right? You get so many VPN licenses for free. Remote desktop, the top one there is the Microsoft one that's built into your Microsoft servers and your Microsoft workstations. TeamViewer is another good one. Go to my PC and log me in. You know, like I would do that kind of in order of, you know, the way we like to have them, right? You might have to pay some, right? Don't use a free one. So let's talk about securing your data, right? The goal here is not to fix everything. You're not ever going to be able to be the 100% secure. And if you try, that's all you're just gonna spend money and time and effort to do that. So it's not possible. Trying to implement perfect security not only is not possible, but the more security you put into place, the more difficult it is going to be for your own computer users to actually get any work done. So you're going to have to strike a balance, right? So here are some tips and tricks, right? So this is like, how can we make our workers stay safe, right? This is all the phishing things, right? Making sure that you're getting your news from trusted sources. Don't open anything from social media at all. Don't do anything about COVID-19 unless it's been approved by the organization first. And when in doubt, ask your management team for help. Using strong passwords, I can't, you know, and multiple passwords. Don't be me. Don't use the same username and password for 12 different systems, right? Try to get your users to make and create multiple usernames and passwords. Use multi-factor authentication, or MFA. This is really important. Multi-factor authentication is a second authentication factor. So if I'm logging into, say, my Office 365 or Google account, I type in my username and password, and then another screen pops up and says, we just sent you a code. Type, you know, to your mobile device, type the code in, right? Or open your Google on your phone and click yes, right? So this is called multi-factor authentication. And what does this prevent against? If my username and password has been compromised, a cyber criminal got a hold of it somewhere and they were trying to log into something, they wouldn't also have my cell phone. And so they wouldn't know what the code is and they wouldn't be able to gain access to my accounts. Using single sign-on really helps protect against people like me, right? It allows the organization to set up really strong usernames and passwords for me on all 12 of my accounts, and then give me one that I need to remember and put into the SSO, single sign-on application. Microsoft Office 365 has one built in. If you're not using Microsoft Office 365, you can also use another really good one for nonprofits called Okta, O-K-T-A. They'll, I think they donate the first 25 licenses for free, and it's a really great system to use. I highly recommend it for doing single sign-on practices. Again, this is going to help you set really super secure username and password, not have the same one for all 12 accounts, etc., but also still make it easy for your users because they only have to remember the one. Hardening your home computers and networks. You know, making sure if you are using a personal device, you're really going to have to like tell your users to step up their what do I say, work habits or you know, discipline here, running their Windows updates every day, making sure that they're also updating their web browsers and the Adobe and all of that stuff, running their antivirus every day. Like they're going to have to do that themselves and remember to do that because it's not an organization owned device. They're going to have to do it themselves. Same thing with their network, right? Making sure that their Wi-Fi network at home has an actual password on it, right? So a lot of people are like, I don't even put a password on my home computer. I don't care who gets into it. Well, you do now because you're doing work stuff from your home network. So make sure you have a password on that. VPN best practices, right? Using an IT professional to configure the VPN for you is your best bet. Doing that training for your users, etc. When your users are connecting to the VPN, they should only use the VPN when they need to get into the systems and then remember to disconnect afterwards. You don't want to leave that tunnel open. Remote desktop best practices, again, always use the IT Pro approved. So ask your IT professional, which RDP should we use or RDC should we use? And some more technical information, again, you know, on this slide, you might want to share this with your IT Pro. Remote work are best practices, making sure your staff can identify phishing emails, and we're going to talk about that for another minute. I know I'm over time, but we started a little bit late. Using multi-factor authentication for all of your systems is really important. Making sure that your users get a strong username and password, and they've got multiple usernames and passwords for things. Creating a policy to train and training his staff on a policy about what can and cannot be done on the home computer is very important. You should take some time. This doesn't cost any money. It just costs you time to do, right? Making sure that that your users understand that they should never store organization information on their home computer. And you can set that in a HR type policy, or you can set it in a tech policy with that mobile device management, mobile application management settings that we talked about earlier. One of the things that we really strongly recommend is education, user education and best practices. We're using a product called Know Before Cybersecurity Training for users. This is a training module that is very inexpensive. The licenses are about $27 per user per year. That's an annual fee. If you go through us, you can get it less expensive than that because we have a volume discount on that. What it does is it allows your users to log into a cybersecurity training lesson, take those lessons, and there's a lot of them. They're really good and really detailed. They show the latest up-to-date phishing scams and whatnot, and so they're being educated about what to look for. We also can set up simulated phishing attacks, so we can actually send out fake phishing emails to your organization, see who falls for it, give you a report on that, and then provide some targeted training opportunities for your users to log into a particular module and just say like, hey, you fell for it and here's what we want you to do. We want you to learn about it and take that knowledge. Not only does that knowledge help protect your organization, but many HR managers are using this as an employee benefit as well. What the employee learns during this training not only helps your organization, it also helps their personal, their personal computer use be safer and safer, and they're sharing that information across the family, etc. So this is a really good thing to do as well. So wow, that was a lot of information to take care of in just that 1 hour's time. So I will open it up for questions and see if anybody's got any questions that they wanted to ask. And thank everybody for participating today and reminding everybody that you should feel free to contact us. We have great resources on our own website, techimpact.org, through our Technology Learning Center. So there's a resource for you. And again, feel free to email me directly if you've got follow-up questions or you wanted to discuss something in more detail. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Teresa and Rachel, I don't know if you're back, you're still on, but is there any questions that are coming up that we might want to answer for anybody?
Yes, we have Melinda Williams who asked, what would be the cost of hiring you to do a fishing for our
$1 million, Melinda. No, I'm kidding. So the phishing attack would be as part of that that Know Before Cybersecurity event. So think about, you know, whatever 24, right? 24 times the number of your staff. So it would be $24 a year for the cybersecurity licensing. And as part of that licensing, we're going to set up those, what we call phishing campaigns. We're going to train somebody within your organization to do the phishing, you know, every once in a while, do a phishing campaign, or we could do it for you, right? So either way is fine, but it's a really low cost way for you to get that information out to your staff and users.
Perfect, thank you. And I have also placed your email in the chat.
Oh yeah, great, super.
And while we're waiting for some more questions, if anybody does have any, I wanted to let everybody know that I will be sending out a survey after this training via email. And once that survey is completed, I will be sending you guys a certificate on attending today's training. If you guys need any continuing education credits by CYFD. Well, it looks like there's not any questions coming in. This webinar was recorded as well as of, you know, a request of a few organizations. And so I will also attach that from our YouTube channel if you guys would like to share this information with your organizations.
Great. Good. Super.
Okay.
Feel free to, if the question comes up later, feel free to shoot me an email and we can get that answer for you.
Perfect. Okay. Well, it is 10:08. Thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you, Linda, for the very informative webinar. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this for us.
You're quite welcome.
All right, guys, have a great day. Thank you so much for joining. Bye-bye.